breaking into the business of care is something that I get a lot of DMs about, either on Facebook, Instagram, even TikTok now. Oh, it's not DM on TikTok, but they like leave it in the comments. And so it's really important that if you are wanting to break into the business, if you are wanting to provide care in the various different ways that are available, that, you know, you tune in and really take some gems from this live training. I have done several of these in the past, and I'm going to continue to do them. And each one has like different takeaways, right? So you have to figure out what gems you want to pull out of this, but it is extremely valuable. And this is this is the stuff. Okay. All right. So are y'all ready to break in to the business of care? So I want to start out with a question. Put one in the chat if you are an aspiring provider, so you're wanting to get started, and put a 2 in the chat if you are already up and running, either licensed or unlicensed, right? Go ahead and put that in the chat for me. So I really want to be super clear that anybody can get started in this business. Anybody can get started in this business. There's a pros and cons to that. But when I say anybody can get started in this business, there is an entry point for everyone. As I talk through this, I do not want you to think that your entry point has to look the same as mine or someone else's. Okay. So I want that to be out there. That's the first thing I want you to know, is that your entry point can look different. The second thing that I want you to know is that you don't have to break into the business of care with licensed assisted living or group homes. Like, there's so many different types of care out there. So do not think that that is the only starting point. And a lot of people kind of teach that with like residential assisted living or even group homes, like that's the only way. That's not the only way. Okay. That's just not it. Now, if that's the way you want to take, then cool. Like, I want what you want, but just keep an open mind, and that that's not the only way. Okay. So your individual startup plan, your startup strategy is going to be individualized. And I think that because people don't understand that there are so many different types of care out there, they kind of get stuck in one path. And so that's why I wanted to kind of lead with that there are so many different types of care that you can provide. And I don't know when it's scheduled, but there is another live that I'll be doing, I believe, later on this month. And that is for, I believe it's called like different types of care or something like that, where I'll do a little bit deeper of a dive on that. But it's so important that you keep an open mind. And you're like, I could already hear you right now being like, well, how do I keep an open mind if I don't know the different types of care that I can provide? And hold on, I will do a whole live on that, and you guys can ask like all the questions that you want to ask. So my startup story was, I started in foster care. And then I transitioned to owning my own agency, working with adults. We work with adults and youth right now. So that's how I started. Some people might start with community hab, right? They might just do community hab. Other people might start with, and community hab is so vast. So I know when I say that, you're like, well, what does that mean? It's so vast. I'm going to break it down in a whole nother video. But people start in different places. Like one of my mentors, she started with community hab day programs, and then she added group homes onto it. So it can be totally customizable to what you want to do. And so I want to lead into this because the 3 things that you are going to need to know before you break into the business of care, or during, at the same time, at the starting line, is you're going to have to, but there's 3 things that you need to know and identify before you even decide to dip your toe into the business of care. Okay. And I swear to God, like, these are the 3 things. The first thing is you have to identify what population you want to serve. And the reason why I say that is because the type of care that you provide, or the opportunities or business models or whatever, based off what type of population you want to serve, may vary. So you want to understand and you want to know and identify the type of care or the type of population you want to serve. This can always change as you get started. Like, you can always pivot, right? But you want to know the population that you're going to serve. The second thing that you want to know and identify is the type of care that you want to provide. It's important. The reason why is there's so many different startup processes. There's so many different avenues to get started. And so you need to know what type of care that you want to provide, because that's what we're going to focus in our market research. And if you are over there looking at a whole different type of care, thinking that you're looking at one thing, well, your startup process is probably going to be a lot bumpier than others because you're not even focused in the right area. Does that make sense? So we want to identify those 2 things. The third thing that you are going to want to identify before breaking into the business of care or at that starting line, right, is the amount of experience or what experience that you have. You have to identify this. Now, you can come back to me and you could say, oh, well, I don't have any experience. Can I get started in this business? Yes, you can, but you will have to either get the experience, you'll have to hire the experience, you will have to do some of those things. And it's going to depend greatly on the type of care that you provide. There have been several members of the program who, and I say the program, the Startup Provider Program, who will say, oh, I don't have this kind of experience, right? I don't have said experience. And they actually do have the experience, but they're not looking at it like in the context that licensing or certification is wanting them to look at it. So we want to look at your experience. And then the bonus thing I want to add is you have to come into this business with a desire to make impact over everything. If you come into this business and you were like, you see the dollar signs and you're like, I want to do this because I want to make X amount of money. Like, cool, great. Like, this is a business at the end of the day. It needs to be profitable, all of those great things. But you have to want to make impact first. And if that is not on the list, if you just don't care about the people who you are serving, if you don't care about the individuals in your care and the people who are entrusting you to provide stellar care, if you don't care about impact, like, this is not the place for you. It's not the place for you. You can go to another group where they're only about the money and they're not really about the impact. They're only about like building wealth and they're not about like the impact that comes from it. So it's so freaking important that you understand that. And I don't want you to leave this live and be like, oh, okay, well, Ariana says I have to want to make impact, so let me just front. Like, people can see and feel the dollar signs in your eyes. It's a vibe, it's an energy. I swear to God, you can go get started. You can get through the licensing process. And then you go to get clients and they will feel that you were only in it for the money. And that is going to really hurt you. And it's not going to be about the mission or making impact or any of that. And that's really unfortunate. And that's a lot of times why we hear stories about horrible group home owners, whether it's for youth or adults, or horrible experiences that people have had, those kind of things. So not all, but there are some of those stories that stem from that. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on. So when you have those three things, and I'm actually going to talk to you about breaking into the business. I'm going to pick one type of care and we're actually going to talk about it like real shit. Okay. A lot of times people will have like the drive and desire. They want to make the impact, but they don't know where to start. Or they've been trying to break into this business for several years, and they just don't know where to start. They don't understand the regulations, the requirements. They don't understand all of those things. So I'm going to talk to you about two different types of care today and breaking into the business. And I'm going to hopefully show like the differences but how similar they are. Okay. So if you don't have a pen and paper handy, this is going to be good. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about just traditional assisted living. We're going to talk about that right now. We're going to talk about that first. So if you say you were ready and you wanted to break into the business, you were like, I'm good. I'm ready. I'm ready to pull the trigger. I need to know what I'm going to do. I need to know what is next. So obviously I can't break down the full thing right here on this live, but I'm going to get into pretty good detail. So if it was me and I was starting out, or I was coaching somebody with starting out, those three questions that I ask you are going to be the first things that you are going to answer. And then we are going to dive into the state regulations, right? We're going to see exactly what the state has outlined for us, the rules, the requirements, because the house actually has to meet said requirements. And most states have like a checklist, okay? They usually have a checklist of like, the requirements for the home. They'll have requirements for the owner operator, right? And so you'll be able to look at that. And then there's rules and regulations and different things that you have to follow, and then policies that you have to provide and submit, right? So we want to identify where that is on our state website. So we want to find that. Once we've knocked most of that stuff off of that list, whether it's getting the home prepared for inspection, whether it's writing policies and procedures and all of that, or it is, I don't know, submitting your application with their fee, like there's some things in between there that you have to do, which are contacting zoning and fire and zoning and fire marshal. So you're going to want to make sure that the home is zoned correctly. And you probably want to do that first if you're looking at buying a home or leasing a home. Okay. So those are some of the first things that you're going to need to do. Now I get asked, well, do I do one first or the other? Well, that depends. If you're going to buy a home or lease a home, you're definitely going to want to contact zoning and fire first, right? But at the same time, you're going to want to find your application and requirements and all of that stuff. So you have to use judgment in doing these. Some things you're doing simultaneously, you're doing them together. Some things that you're going to do first, it depends where you're at in the process, hence why I said that everybody's journey is their own. Okay, so you have to do that. Once you are at, like, you have the house, zoning's good, fire's good, you've turned in your application and all of that, then you're in this waiting period. You wait for them to review your application, you wait for them to get back to you, you can follow up, right? You can do those things. Sometimes they're going to lose your application. I've had that happen a couple times. And this is like 4 to 5 weeks of you like waiting. It could be a 2-week period of time. It could be 4 to 5 weeks. Like I said, each state is different, but you get into this waiting period. And then what happens is they get back to you. Either they lost your application, you resubmit your application. Anyways, they get back to you and they tell you what is missing. They tell you what you need to do. And so from there, it's either you make the corrections and you resubmit, or you don't and you tap out, right? And that's just the real raw truth of it all. So you go through all of that, you submit your corrections or whatever it is, you submit again, they tell you yay or nay. And if you're up and licensed, then you can start accepting clients. And I know I kind of walk through that and you're like, okay, well, that's not a detailed step-by-step. And the reason why I can't go, okay, who could I use as an example and pick on? Who is D Williams? Okay, D, this is exactly what you're going to do for your state and this and this and this. I can't do that on here because your startup process is individualized. We have to look into your own state. We have to look into your regulations and requirements and all of those things. But in a whole, when you're looking at the startup process, like that is what it entails. That can be done within 90 days. It could be done within a year. It really depends on the individual who is starting the business. I can give you a list of things to do and you can go and do them and get them done within 60 days. So it depends on you. It depends on the state. It can depend on a lot of things. Some places you have to get zoning and permitting, like you have to get that done before you can even submit an application. So it just has to be individualized. And I do not ever want to put it out there that this is a one size fits all, because it's not. It's very individualized and it's based off the type of care that you can provide, okay? So say you got all licensed and you are open to take clients in or residents in, individuals, program participants, however you say it, you can start doing that at that time. You can start doing that, you can market and all of those things. I actually encourage you to start marketing once you know that your license is probably going to be approved. You can do that. And if you're assisted living, you probably are going to have 24-hour staff. You might not have wake staff. I know I don't, but in some states they do require you to have wake staff, and your staff is in the home, or care team. I like to say care team. The individual's in the home, and then you keep moving people and you keep serving and providing premier care, right? That's it in a little nutshell. If you were looking at like independent living, or it could be residential supported living, or it's in like an apartment like setting, it is still very similar, right? You don't necessarily have to get the units licensed in some states, just depends, and it depends on your funding also, but they do have a type of care where you are in an apartment like setting and the individuals, program participants, residents, clients, however you want to say it, they live in that home. And the staff care team doesn't necessarily have to provide 24-hour care. It's more so tailored to that individual needs. So if that individual needs care between 8 a.m. and noon, that's when they need the support, then that could be when the care team member or staff are in that home, in that residence, helping them with those things. So there is more to it than that. It is really hard to kind of break down because then funding comes into play and certification comes into play and all of those things. And again, it starts with the clientele that you want to serve and the type of care you want to provide and the experience that you have. So all of those things go into it. I find that what prevents so many people from actually getting started is understanding the different business models available. And I've talked to so many providers, like y'all don't even know, so many providers who are current providers who got started on their own, which is great. They got started and then there's like nothing, like their business like doesn't even have a pulse. There's like no income, there's no clients being served, there's none of it because they just like they don't know what to do next. And they haven't, like when they got started, like they didn't do their projections. They didn't know their funding source. Like they didn't know all of those things. And so you can get into this business and fall flat on your face. You really can. And it's a horrible place to be. And I don't, like, my heart goes out to anybody like that. But what the beautiful thing about it is knowing that you have the ability to pivot. You have the ability to pivot the type of care you want to provide, the ability to pivot the clientele that you want to serve, all of those things. And you have the ability to bring clients in and serve them and make powerful, positive impact, right? Getting started is hard, right? And I kind of struggle with saying it's hard, or it's like, it's definitely not easy, but just kind of using hard, right? But it's not, like, it's going to take some work. It's going to take some work to get started. And it just is. It can happen just like that. It can happen within 90 days. It can happen just like that. But there's also, you have to understand yourself. Are you going to come in and drag your feet? Are you going to come in and complain? Are you going to come in and jump all the hurdles that you need to jump? Right? And do the work? If you're not going to do it in that way, then yeah, it's going to take you a lot longer. So it just depends. And I don't ever want to come on and tell you guys that it is this little cookie cutter thing that you have to do and you have to check these boxes to get where you want to go. You can absolutely get to where you want to go. You can make the most money that you want to make. You can serve powerfully and do all of those things, but your journey, your process is going to be different from everybody on this chat, anybody who's watching this live, right? And you have to know and understand that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be so drastic and so different that you can't get support with getting started. You can absolutely get support with getting started. I work in all 50 states and I am happy to help you if that's something that you want to do. Another question that I have seen in the group is, do I have to have a business degree to break into this business? And the answer to that is no. And I want to say this very, very clearly so you guys understand what I mean. I do not have a degree. I am a college dropout. I'm a college dropout, and I'm happy that I am. Do you have to have nursing experience? Depends on the type of care that you provide. Not all, right? Not, I would say 80%, you do not have to have a nursing degree. You just don't. There's certain types of care that I cannot provide right now because I don't have a nurse on staff. And that's okay, right? It's not every single type of care is going to require you to have a nurse. So push that aside. Push that aside. You do not have to have a degree. You do not have to have a nurse on staff, depending on the type of care you provide. And another question that I get is, do you have to have experience? And again, I would say you would need to have some experience in the field. And if you don't have any experience, then you need to get somebody who has experience. What does that mean? Say, to be an administrator, you have to have worked in the field for 5 to 7 years. This is just out there. I'm going to tell you my story when I get, but this is just an example. Say, to be an administrator, you have to have that experience. But then you're like, okay, to get that experience, I have to go work somewhere for 5 to 10 years to say that I have this experience. So yeah, that's an option. Or you can hire somebody with that experience. And, or in some cases, there is a training or a class or something that the state will allow you to do as a certificate or in lieu of having that experience. So for me, in my example, when I went to go get my license to apply, right, my application, I had to go apply for this. They wanted me to have, I believe it was like 5 years experience and or core competencies. Okay, so let me break this down for you. I had experience already because I was a foster parent, so I was working with youth. I hadn't been working with adults, but I was in mental health, DD, all of that. So I had that background and experience, but I didn't have like 5 years experience like in a nursing field or in another administrative role or anything like that. So what I did was I went and took a class. It was called Core Competencies, and it was like, I don't know, a couple days a week over 4 to 5 weeks. And I was able to gain that experience. So those are just examples that they do want you to have some experience, but you're able to kind of tailor that. So, and that's just the honest to God, like that's just, you know, what it is. And again, I can't speak to every single state because this live isn't about every single state. It's not state specific, right? So I hope that helps. Well, I hope this live was helpful. I hope that you guys had some takeaways, even if it was just one. If you're watching this live, if you're here, whether you're watching the live or the replay, I just want you to know that I can do it, you can do it, and it's just about your determination to get through the process and to make powerful, positive impact. period. Once you have your context in place in the bigger picture, you are able to move through it. And if you don't have a big enough context, some people say why. If you don't have a big enough one, if it's not strong enough, you will probably crumble through the process, because you can even see in the comments that some people are getting denied with, I think it was the facility need review that I read. There are sometimes you will submit an application, will get kicked back, and you'll have to make some changes. But if you're one to buckle through the process, I'm gonna tell you right now, this isn't for you. It's not for you, because you just won't make it through. You just won't, because there are going to be some bumps in the road and you have to be able to overcome them. Plain and simple. I do not like the last thing I want to do is sugarcoat it. I don't want to sugarcoat it. Have I made the process like way more understandable for you guys? Have I collapsed the timeline with the startup provider program? Like, I have. But even there, like, you have to keep going. You have to put in the work. I'm working with a gentleman in Iowa, and it's been hell. It's been 6 to 8 weeks for them to just review his application, and he's been checking and checking and checking, and it's like the state will drag their feet. And if you feel defeated in that and you want to throw in the towel, it's not going to work. Like, it's not like, this is a journey, right? That's another reason why I made the startup provider program a year long. Is it going to take you a year to get through the curriculum? No. The training library? No, it's not. But it's that long so you have support for a year. There was something else I was going to say. If you don't have something, I kind of spaced it, but it's just like, you have to be able to endure the things that you need to do to get to where you want to go. This is another one. You'll see the checklist and you'll be like cruising through, you'll be filling it out, and then you'll get to policies and procedures and you'll be like, oh my God, I don't know how to do this. And then you'll just stop. You'll read through it. You maybe will try to create one. You'll be like, this is difficult, and you'll stop and you'll throw in the towel. And it's like, let's push ourselves beyond what we feel like we're capable of and just look at the greater good of it all, look at the context and hold that, so that we can continue on during those times where we feel frustrated. Because you're going to feel frustrated. You're going to feel like, what the hell am I doing this for? These people just wasting my time, or nobody's following up with me, or nobody's returning my emails or calls. Like, you are going to feel like you've reached out and these people have told you, and I say these people, like the state, right? They tell you like the same thing over and over and over again. They may give you the runaround. They're used to people reaching out. They're used to people saying they're going to do something, them spending time explaining it to them, and then that person falling off the map. They're used to it. People inquire about this business all of the time. If you're going to be different, then actually make it through the process, right? Actually do the work to get to where you're going to go. You will thank yourself. Your community will thank you. Your family will thank you, because you did the work. We've been in business for 5.5 years. And with this business, I've been able to start other businesses. I've been able to build generational wealth in other businesses outside of this one. This one's kind of just opened the door, right? I was able to, before I had my license agency and I was providing care to youth, I didn't just go spend that money frivolously. I invested it into this agency, and now this agency is a 7-figure business, right? So you have to look at the long-term goal, the bigger picture, and you have to really hold that close to you. Because if you don't have a good reason, if you don't have a why, if you're like, oh, I'm just going to try this out and see where it goes, you'll fall flat on your face and you'll be irritated and disgruntled and all of those things. All right. But okay, y'all. I think that is it. That is an overview of breaking into the business of care. And like I said, I'll do another live later on this month of the different types of care, and I'm sure that will be helpful too. All right, have a most wonderful rest of your day, and I'll see you next time.